Hi. Okay, yeah, I think now you're back
Hi.
online. Hi, Anya. Am I audible?
Hi. I think my internet is... Yes, yes, you are. I don't know if I'm audible or not.
It's lagging slightly, but I think
Yeah.
it should be, yeah, good to go.
Okay,
Anyway, yeah,
awesome.
I think I'll just let Shruti in as well quickly.
Yes. All
And
right.
here we are.
How
No,
are you? Oh, is she here?
I'm just fine. Yeah, I think she's just joining. There's an issue in her signing up, though I'll just
Yes, I
try
know.
it
I
again.
remember discussing with her yesterday. I think this is also her first Instagram live. So I think she
Oh,
might be just
really?
figuring out. Yes. So I think
Okay.
what you'll have to do, if you do see her in the
Yeah.
participant section, just send her a request to join in.
No, no, yeah, I
Because
did
that's,
that.
yeah.
I did
Okay.
that a
I
couple
think
of
that
times as well. I think she just be on board. But anyway, how good
see.
evening and how are you? What's up? How are you
I'm
doing?
better. I was actually diagnosed with dengue a while ago, so I'm still
Oh, okay.
recovering from it. Weak,
How are you keeping now?
but much better. I'm much better.
All right. So we all
But
wish you a speedy recovery.
the pollution sort of makes it much difficult to, I think, get back on track because my throat and nose are still blocked because of the pollution. But yes, getting better with time.
All right. So we all wish you a speedy recovery. I'll just check in
Thank
once
you.
again.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys, for everyone who's joined in. It's great to have you all. All right. So Shruti is
Hello.
Hi.
also live on board. Hi, Shruti. How are you?
Hi, Himanshu. Hi, Anya. I'm good. All good.
Hello.
First live I'm doing on Instagram, so I just hope it goes well.
Amazing. Great stuff. So, I mean, finally we're here and we're live, and it's amazing that we're live again on an amazing Saturday evening. And I hope you guys are really doing well. And so I'll just dive right in and explain the title where I have kept in, where I mentioned that we're all equal and not more or less equal than the others, right? So I think that has a very contrasting and a highlighting effect on the today's topic that we're conversing on, and which is tackling gender equality, because it's very much out there stated and it's very much out there propagated, but none of it is actually explained as to how it's supposed to be tackled, or how people are supposed to deal with it on the first hand basis, right? So in with our initiative called VONG, which is the voice of the new generation, right, which is pioneered by an organization called Orion Square. We at the Voice of the New Generation are a bunch of highly exhilarated students who want to take this initiative forward with the help of of students who are not even adults yet, right? So maybe school students or college students are the ones who are pioneering this entire initiative, because we want to enable the policymakers, the people who are really answerable and accountable, to ensure that they really deliver as to our expectations, and can meet the requisite and can meet this requisite norms that are required for us to live in a sustainable environment, right? So we are now focusing on a plethora of sustainable development goals, and we feel that as students, when we do pioneer the objective, it becomes much more of a request, so to say, to all the authorities and to all the bodies, wherein they could really get stuff done, and not just be the ones who make fake promises but also execute on ground. But I welcome both of you, Anya and Shruti, to this amazing live session, and it's great having you guys on board. Anya is an exemplary co-founder of this organization called Golub, and a massive gender rights advocate, and also a TEDx speaker. So that's calls like for an elaborate profile. Whereas Shruti is an anti-caste feminist, which is amazing to know about, and also a gender rights advocate. However, I would request each of you, both of you, to maybe take a minute to introduce yourselves, and maybe tell us a little about the work that you're doing and your experience that has been in the past couple of years, and how have you managed to establish gender equality in the society. So, Anya, can we start with you?
Yes. For starters, I don't think I've been able to establish gender equality in society. If that would have been there, I don't think we would have had this conversation. But I'm trying
Obviously.
my best as an individual and also a part of an organization to make sure that it's a living reality. Um, so I run an organization called Girl Uprise where we've been working on menstrual hygiene, not just access to menstrual hygiene, but also shattering the taboo that's around menstrual hygiene. We've been working with refugees as well. And one thing that we are going to start very soon is legal literacy in the country. I have a very strong feeling, and that's what we've read, that literacy is something that isn't very accessible to a lot of people. And a lot of us come from very privileged background, especially I do. And I know that whenever I need some advice, I reach out to a friend, I reach out to a lawyer. But I don't think that's accessible to everybody, especially people who don't come from societies or backgrounds like I do. So to making sure that all of them also get access to probably the resources that I have access to, so sort of in a way extending my privilege. I'm a TEDx speaker, but that's something that's very recent. In the beginning of the second wave, I ran this initiative called COVID Fighters India, which was one of India's largest youth-run initiative to help people rally for resources, verify resources. We were around 13,000 citizens of the country doing that day in and day and out. And I think that's more or less about me. Shruti, go
That's
ahead.
insane. That's amazing. Great to hear. Shruti?
That was a really wonderful profile, Anya. As I mean, just do something like that at such a young age. Very, very, very inspiring. So, I'm Shruti. I'm basically working at the intersection of gender and public policy. I don't know if that sounds like I just saw somebody saying kitna jargon hai, so I'll just break that down to how do you find a sort of a middle ground between gender justice and policy making, legislations, etc. How do you make governments and government policies more gender sensitive, gender responsive? That has been my attempt. Not an easy thing to do. So I've been in this development sector in this space for about 7, 8 years now. And like
Wow.
Himanshu mentioned initially, my journey in this sector started by gender rights advocacy and like I mean as a woman, as a feminist, um, living in the sort of society we live in, it kind of comes very naturally. So like a lot of people ask how and why gender, why not some other area. So it comes with that, but I think over the years I've understood that depending on the sort of society or country or region you live in, patriarchy operates through different modes, which is why what Himanshu said earlier, anti-caste feminist is important because in India it operates through those caste nexus. So yeah, that's about me. I mean, I've been working on a lot of different things to do with gender. Some of the questions or my conversation with Smriti and Anya just yesterday really sparked my interest, curiosity, and also was very reminiscent of some of my very early projects in gender, which has to do with gender roles and all of that. So that got me really excited. Yeah, I'll stop with that and hope to dive into this conversation and produce some interesting conversation. Yeah.
I
That's
think I'm going to learn a
amazing.
lot
Yeah.
from Shruti today. I can't wait
We
to
learn from
hear
each
more.
other. We learn from each other.
This is great, right? So I just take a minute and maybe, give a shout out to maybe Smriti because she couldn't be around right now because she's not keeping well. But she really got both of you guys together and gave me the opportunity to host this session. But I think a good credit goes out to her as well, for me
Mm.
from enabling this entire session to happen. So I think thank you, Smriti, so much for doing this. Also, if I would just make a slight remark where, when both of you all were discussing your profiles and while Anya mentioned legal literacy and while Shruti mentioned policy making, a lot of it has like, a gap to be bridged between the two, wherein we know that, people really need to bring out the best of the resources and the authorities that we have, right? Because ultimately it comes down to proper advocacy, it comes down to proper rights, it comes down to the liberation and the implementation of all of this. So I think that becomes the starting point wherein this can just be taken forward. This can be advocated, and this can then be I think be known to the public at large because like Anya mentioned that most of us come from privileged backgrounds, and we know that okay, this is something that is happening and this is something that needs to be tackled. But in what nature is also supposed to be determined, right? So I think without further ado, now that we've done our introductions, I think we'll just establish the fundamental concept for today, which is on gender equality. Right. So if both of you could just quickly mention your takes on what exactly would we want in terms of gender equality as a nation, as common citizens in our day-to-day lives, how would that help our future? And why should we really have a gender equal environment as well? So Anya, would
Shruti, do
you
you want
or
to go?
Shruti?
Okay.
Yeah, Shruti, would you take it up?
Shruti, why don't you go first?
Okay. I think it's very simple without complicating it. I would say gender equality just means that no part of my life should be dictated by what lies between my legs. As simple as that. I mean, it's not, let's not even speak in a gender binary kind of terms. So it doesn't matter. Access to opportunities, access to rights, it should just not depend on anything that is dictated by what my body parts consist of. That's what it is for me, very simply put. Whichever country you live in, wherever it is, we know it's a very well accepted fact that we live in a patriarchal society. It operates in different ways, to different levels and extent, maybe in different parts of the world. But we live in a patriarchal society, and that comes with its share of, different forms of subordination towards women, towards gender minorities, and with the consequence of which are also faced by cisgendered men, as with the unrealistic expectations from men to be, I don't know, masculine and all those really silly things. So yeah, that's what it is for me.
I
Great,
think
great
for
takeaway.
me, it lies on the same lines as well. I think she said exactly what I would have said. For me, it means equal access, be it to rights, be it to opportunities, be it to the way people look at you. And I think looking at people on the basis of what they've done, who they are, rather than looking at their gender, looking at their caste, looking at their class, more looking on their acumen and their ambition, their ability to achieve things, their intelligentsia, things that they've done, things that they want to do, rather than looking at, uh, you know, for us, that looking at their gender. And I definitely do think that for me, it also means breaking all of these stereotypes that we have. So it's difficult for me to say ending patriarchy because I know that's a long process and it evolves a lot of layers, but it definitely, for me, does mean breaking the way that we look at women and this definition of an ideal that woman that we have. I mean, I know it's evolved over time, but even today, I think it's extremely backward and it's extremely stereotypical. So I think a lot of that has to change.
Right. So it is more or less a common saying when they say that sex is between the legs, but gender is between the ears, and which is why the fact that we need to normalize the entire concept of not having a gender phobia of sorts is also something that should be a part of the common practice in our day-to-day lives, right? And which is why the need to really establish an equitable or a sound society is where we can function more efficiently, have a better intelligent quotient, have work on our acumen and all the things that are really requisite for us to move ahead, right? Economically, socially, or politically as well. So we did a survey, and we did ask a lot of our audience and our followers who have faced certain instances where they felt that gender injustice was done to them. So I will one by one cite all of these instances, and I will ask, and I'll point out to you all, and you all could maybe answer as to how these instances should have tackled, right? So the first one is, I am a girl and I have short hair. I feel comfortable that way, but I get categorized as a lesbian. How do I tackle this mindset? So, Anya, would you take this forward?
So I think the first thing that I'd like to say is that um, in the society that we have today, it's very easy for people to objectify you and to fit you into these boxes that they have, that this is how a certain person should look. So kudos for you to feel comfortable the way that you look and the way that you have. And I think that's great that you haven't been affected by what people think. And it's even better that you want to understand how to move beyond this so that other people don't face this. And I was just thinking about how do you explain this to someone who's in school, right? For me to say something like, oh, you should maybe talk to them, explain them the concept of what a lesbian is, how it's not really about how you look, but it's about how, what kind of people you like, what are your romantic interests, other things that come in, and not just the way that you dress up. But then I also understood that it's important for you probably to explain to those people through examples. So, if there are famous people that we look up to, or if we see, we have a lot of people who are not lesbian and have shorter hair, be it actresses, be it Emma Stone, Emma Watson, anyone. But at the same time, you also have people with longer hair who might have different interests, who might be interested in women. So I think that's definitely one way of seeing that, people who might like people of the same gender don't look a certain way. It's more to do with how they feel and their romantic likings than to do with how their hair are. And definitely, I definitely think that this is one example that you should give to the boys or to the people around you, that have you seen that person? That person's not, that person's straight and they have shorter hair. What do you have to say about that? And on a bigger, on a maybe intellectual level, I would definitely say that you should really ask them to Google, to search, just do a simple search on what a lesbian means and what a gay slash bisexual person means, so that they understand that it's not really to do with how you look, it's to do with a lot more than that. Yeah, I think that's definitely that what I would say to someone who's in school.
I think that's very well put. Shruti, would you like to add something to this?
No, I think she's pretty much covered most of what I would have said. But I think apart from this, one thing that you can try and do is whenever people make comments like this, which may or may not make you feel uncomfortable, but just in principle that this is not the right thing to say, you can just ask them very gentle, like not in a confrontational way, like very curiously, why do you feel that? And sometimes I mean, there are cases where people are just absolutely hopeless, but sometimes when you ask them why repeatedly, you make them look inward and then feel very awkward about their own problematic thoughts. So if the person is a close friend, etc., you should just ask them very genuinely, why do you feel that? Explain to me. And then that's a little less preachy sometimes, and it works because then you make that person really introspective. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so you're supposed to also instigate the kind of a reflective process from where that person is coming, because you don't really
Yeah.
know the kind of an intellectual backing or the capacity or the kind of a
Yeah.
knowledge that the person has. So I think that is a much better approach, that you can get that person to reflect upon why is it that they really think so and get their inquisitive juices running. So I think that's a great solution out there. Thank you guys. The second one is that okay, this is a question that we got, that why is it a big deal for girls to date, but not the same for boys? So, Shruti, why don't you take that up first?
Okay. So see, I think we live in a society where this might sound like a very loaded comment. It's a fact that everything that women do is not independent. Like she's not just representing her. It's tied to the family, to honor, to several different things like that. So whereas that's not the same case for the boy in the family. Okay. So she is representing the family image when she's out in the public space. So, and of course, there is this thing of women not being given the agency to really operate and think for themselves. There is this aspect of wanting to control what she does, where she goes, whom she meets, who's a friend, forget dating, like even fairly basic things. This is, of course, again, coming back to one of the earlier topics, control. And this is from my experience working with young boys a few years back. Their brothers, these were young teenage boys in a school in Mumbai. We were having a group discussion, and some of the guys said, you know what, we don't like our sisters using mobile phones and something like that. And we said, why not? And then they were like, वो ना दूसरे जात के बच्चों से बात करते हैं, लड़कों से बात करते हैं. So you have to understand that this whole thing of exercising control over who the woman talks to. Sometimes it's okay for women to date as long as the guy is somebody your family would approve. You understand what I'm saying? So, whereas this
Right.
is not the case for men, okay, for boys, they can do what they want. In the end, their families will fix some girl up with him, and that's what he's going to follow. But a woman, the minute she steps out, has to carry the bag. I'm not justifying this. I'm not saying this is okay, but this is why this sort of setup is why. everything a woman does. It's not just dating. Basic things like even what you wear, even, like wearing lipstick is considered very like women are slut shamed for doing that as much as just what kind of makeup you put. Forget about talking to
Yeah.
men. So it comes with that attached baggage of what people will think about the family as well. So yeah, that's one answer. There's a long question. I mean, there could be multiple things, but I'll stop with that.
Right. So there's like this constant burden slash backing that you do carry in the name of honor, but it's more about individuality, I believe. So and that should be carried forward, right? Anand, do you have anything to add on to what Shruti just said?
I think she's really put it well, and I think it aligns with what I said in the beginning that we have this ideal image of how a girl or slash a woman is in different stages of her life as well. That when you're in school, they expect you to do, if you are in school, that is, they expect you to do well, focus on studies, maybe participate in extracurricular activities, but not too much, not be extremely outgoing, but go be outgoing. So you have these really set boxes and tick marks that you have to tick to be an ideal student. But for boys, those parameters are actually really low. It's funny how, and I don't know if everybody's gone through this, but the stereotype of boys not having a good handwriting. And if a boy has a good handwriting, he's considered a really good student. But girls are supposed to have good handwritings. And it's as simple as that. There are a lot of things that they're just supposed to do inherently because they are girls. And that goes with dating. They're inherently not supposed to date when they're younger because people think that they will sort of get deflected from their actual goal of getting marks or they will get distracted, but that doesn't apply to boys. They're not they feel that chalta hai, they're young, abhi to unki umar hai ye sab karne ki, and as soon as they reach xyz amount of age, that's when they can start focusing. But for girls, I think their age starts as soon as you enter school. So I think these mindsets of an ideal boy and an ideal girl are very, very different and very, very strict for girls. And I think that's just supporting what Shruti just said.
I think that's a fabulous illustration for something as simple as handwriting, because you do tend to know that this is a concept which is drilled in from the very adolescent years, wherein you're just in the school and you have that kind of a an expectation. For girls, it's definitely said that it's supposed to be absolutely serious. For guys, they take it
Yeah.
extremely casual. So yeah, I think this is something which is, in the formative years of your education, I don't think that this is something which is necessary as well. It's something that needs to be developed over time, and which is why the education systems teach what they really do, right? So we move on to the next question. The question was, why does my mom only teach me or expect me to do the household chores? And this is from a girl. Why does my mom only teach me or expect me to do the household chores? And Anya, I think you should take it up first.
So, this reminds me of an interview that I saw of Indra Nooyi, where she said that, it had just been
Right.
announced that she's going to be the president slash chairman of PepsiCo. And she came home and her mom told her to get milk after listening to the news.
Mm.
And she said, why didn't you tell my husband? She said he was really tired. Why didn't you tell the children? They just come back from school slash they were busy. And she asked her that, I've just gotten this huge position and you're going and asking me to get the milk. And her mom said that, you might be the president slash chairperson of whatever organization, but at home, you're a good mother, you're a good wife, and and you're a good daughter, and that's something that you must do. So I think this is entrenched into society that for you to be a good woman, you may excel at work, you might run your own organization, you might lead initiatives, but at home, these are things that you have to do, and you have to strike a perfect balance between household chores and what you do at outside your household. So I think this is one big thing that's been a problem, and which is what I was saying, the definition of an ideal woman has evolved. They think she should be independent, but not independent enough to not do things at home. So I think that's one big reason because, and in short, it's basically how we've always seen women run households. And by run households, I really mean those are the people who are running the household. They're the ones who are deciding what, from food to cleaning to finances even. It's sometimes it's funny how we always say the man runs the household, and this famous saying of world for the man and house for the woman. And I think regardless of living in the 21st century, that's something that's still quite, still the norm.
So I still didn't get the tackling answer from you. I got the reasoning, I
So,
got the
I mean,
explanation, but how do you tackle this? Yeah,
I would really say this has, because it has a lot of layers, right? It's a societal problem that students face, parents face. More importantly, I think parents also need to be, also need to have exposure to, say, workshops. I mean, in schools, we're not taught, but we're told about gender equality. In schools, we're taught about so many other things. You and I have this platform where we're discussing this, but our parents aren't a part of this conversation. So I think a very
absolutely.
important part of this is making that generation a part of the conversation. And it's a difficult conversation to have. I will not deny that, going and asking your parents or saying something and saying like, aap mujhse kyun karate ho? Why don't you ask my brother to do it, is a very difficult thing. Might even be offensive, but it's a conversation to be had with the generation that's propagating this, and
Uh-huh.
also amongst ourselves, to recognize the fact that this is happening is the first step, and having those conversations and figuring out what can be done and why is it happening, I think is a way definitely to go. And schools, why don't schools have training for gender equality for parents? The only sort of interaction that you have in schools with the parents is those parent teacher meetings where you're talking about your child,
Right,
but you're not really
right.
giving parents exposure to things that are happening. And also, I don't mean train them, but I definitely do mean giving them exposure and making them understand how
Mhm.
important it is to treat their children equally.
Right. So my takeaways from this would be that we need to have a more conversative parenting, especially in the more
Yeah.
formative years. And the second would
Yes.
be when we have institutionalized the entire concept of
Yes.
educating a child. I think practical education is also something that does have a massive play into how you carry
Yes.
yourself, because when we say that that person really carries himself or herself well, it's supposed to be bound by the factor about their personality, about the way they react, about the way they have opinions about things. So I think that is something that should be institutionalized as well. And it was really well pointed out, very elaborate. It was it was a great response from you. And I think that these are the conversations that really need to happen from now on. So thank you so much for that answer. Moving on to the next one. This instance is that I am a boy. I'm in the ninth standard. I have always been under the pressure to earn money to raise my family in future. Why aren't we taught that both boys and girls can share the financial burden of the household? So, Shruti, would you take that up?
Yeah. So I think both these questions are very interlinked, right? It is this idea of gender roles, assigned gender roles, that what is expected of a boy and what is expected of a girl, that is detrimental to both genders, right? So at least now, if we're speaking about boy
Absolutely.
and girl in the household, I usually don't like to speak in these, binary terms. But if we're speaking about boy and girl in the household growing up, let's say two siblings, there is this expectation that the girl has to take care of all the household work, and the boy is usually not encouraged to learn cooking or wash the vessels or whatever, help out the mother in the household. And there's this thing that children pick up on what they observe more than what they're taught. So if you grow up seeing your mother do all the work, and in many households, mind you, the mother's also working. It's not just the mothers who are not working, they handle everything. So the assumption is that once you're inside the private space of your home, there are certain things that your mother has to do anyway, and your father will be doing certain other things. He's always the breadwinner, right? The man is always the breadwinner. Now, this affects both the man and the woman, or the boy and the girl in the household, because you have the baggage, the girl has the baggage of not always focusing on her career, because the housework comes first, domestic work comes first. And for the boy, they have to not only earn, but they have to earn well. They're compared with their cousins and the people, other boys in the neighborhood. There's always this comparison ki, he has a fatter paycheck than mine. And then you're always made to feel less of a quote unquote man. You're not, things like that. So this entire thing is a part of the same ecosystem, and it affects both the genders here involved.
So I think one of the things that should happen, must happen, is especially if there are siblings and cousins in the household, you have to have these conversations also with people of your own age groups, because that's easier. Like Anya said, speaking to older people is a little hard. It's not something that a lot of people have the uh, opportunity to do, because in a lot of households it's not it's considered very impolite to really go and educate your parents or the older generation, whereas it's very important and very easy to have conversations with people your own age, whether it's your friends, your cousins. And I was just speaking about this to my cousins just yesterday, who are also very young, like in their early 20s. And we were just discussing how boys need to step up and say that, why is my sister always having the burden to do all this work? Let me help her out. And that kind of, there is a conversation that evolves out of that, which again, like I said earlier, is less preachy. And then it goes on to making the other person really look inward and introspect. Hey, yeah, that's true. Why can't he help her out? And similarly, if she is ambitious and she wants to write, I don't know, whatever entrance and competitive exams, and she has this career and ambition set, you encourage her to follow that, not like spend time doing the household. So this is a balancing act that needs to be done, and this conversation really needs to happen very much between your peers as much as you need to have, because it's easier to have that conversation. I keep telling my male friends that, there are some things it's easier for you to convince your bro than for me too. Because the minute I say it, then I become the annoying feminist. There's so much of change that can happen. And men really, why I'm saying men need to step up is use that male privilege, make some good use of it to change these mindsets. However much possible. I'm not saying that you can pick all battles. Some battles are very hard to fight. I'm not expecting that out of everyone, but do use your privilege to push back all these gender norms.
Absolutely. So I think that since this is historically implicit and very well demarcated gender roles of sorts, then I feel that the entire convincing part comes from the same gender, so to say, right? Because like both of you just mentioned that it's very easy for you to talk to your peers who you can relate to better than someone else entirely, because if they have themselves faced it on their first hand, then it becomes a much easier thing to either propagate or as well as even show the fruits of it. I mean, if let's say men help out in the household chores, it's not that they would be less efficient in doing so. Maybe they could at times do who knows a better job, or maybe women can do a better job in the positions of management. We already know Mrs. Indra Nooyi and the kind of a standing that she has, and the impact that she has created, right? So it's a two-faced coin. It's a two-way street, and I think that is something that needs to be propagated from within your friends, within the social circles where you are most comfortable in, because it's not necessarily supposed to be ingrained to you by either a seminar or by someone who is a preacher, because until unless this becomes a genuine conversation that you have at least at length, then is only when the reflecting process begins, right? So I think it was very well iterated by both of you, and thank you so much for the responses. And so I'll move on to the one last question that we had received from the responses. It's how do we fight gender stereotypes at home? Because everything is supposed to start from home. So I think that gender stereotypes also starts at home. And how are we supposed to fight that? So both of you, I hope, and answers from both of you. I think Anna, would you take it up first?
So I think I'm really going to pick up on the point that Shruti said that uh, for gender stereotypes, I definitely think that males should use their privilege. If it's about a girl and a boy, then I definitely think if there are siblings at home, there's a brother and a sister, I think that it really is the responsibility of the brother to also step up and ask questions, as simple as she said, that why is she supposed to do this, or to back the sister up for different things, be it an entrance examination, be it furthering continuing her studies, or be it anything. It could really be something small, as small as him helping out going to get the vegetables, to as big as saying that why isn't she given an opportunity to sit for whatever entrance examination that she has to. Other than that, I really think you both are very right about the fact that we can't really make, and it would be weird for me to say that why don't you sit and with your parents, ask them to go through all of these readings or make them understand that acha, this is gender stereotyping and ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए, ऐसे क्यों होता है, to indulge them in a debate or a deliberation. It's very difficult, and more often than not, they might just get offended that, why are you teaching us, we brought you up, or the entire thing happens. But what we can actually do is make use of things that are easily available. So something as simple as a documentary or a YouTube video, Instagram reel, something that they don't really think we're forcing them to watch, but at the same time, they're going to take something away from it. Because one thing that I've learned from all interactions that I've had is that I really learn when I introspect. And I think that's one of the most important things. Each member of the family needs to introspect about the different roles that people play and what is happening. And only then will they want to change. If I come and tell you that, you should do this and not that, you will get on an offense and try to wonder why I'm telling you, or maybe think of a defense of not doing that. But if I put a seed in your mind to think about that a little more, to notice a little more about what's happening in the household, and once you see people supporting each other, be it fathers or be it brothers supporting the girl child or the daughter or the mother for that matter, making your mom also realize that she does have authority, not just at home, she has the authority for other things, her opinion really matters. And to do something like that would be asking her opinion when an important discussion is going on. In a lot of families, we see that if there's a dinner table conversation that's happening, and if there is a housemaker, her opinion might not be very valuable, but she really might have something important to say. To give that platform to the women in the house is extremely important. And then maybe once that is set up, extending that to your extended family gatherings. We keep hearing on Instagram and keep seeing these memes that extended family में ऐसा होता है. Your They always ask you about your marriage status, relationship status, but then maybe little by little changing that. One second. I think the electricity is gone. Yes. I think little by little changing that, asking them back, maybe saying something like, okay, my relationship is something that I wouldn't want to discuss, but you know what? I've started this new position at a company. So I think standing up, but at the same time also using your privilege and helping others get that platform within the house. Yeah.
I just want to like follow up on one point. As a student,
Yes.
I'm slightly curious about it. So the part where
Yes.
you mentioned that self-learning is supposed to take place, consuming content on YouTube, on different platforms which really do engage with great content, is something that is part of the self-learning process, right? Because no one
Yes.
would want to maybe be preached or be by someone else, and no one really wants to you know work on others' directions. But the choice of the consumption of that kind of a content is also something that is, a very, very voluntary process, right? So for
Yeah.
someone who wishes to choose to consume, you get the thought process where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
if they do not really consume that kind of a content, they would not get into the stage of being
Which is
self-reflective or
so,
being.
which is why I said that, if you're a student who's going to college, right, and if this is something that you want to explain to your family, maybe sitting with them and making them access this content. Because you're right,
Right,
we do live in a
right.
world where social media becomes an echo chamber. If you follow a
Hmm.
certain ideology, or if you have a certain sort of a linkage, that's the kind of content you're going to see on your social media. That's how algorithms work. But the
Yeah,
way to
exactly.
change that and put a break to that is only going to be when you give others access to maybe what you're saying. So say for example,
Right.
I I'm a student and I think that my mom thinks about girls who look a certain way in a certain manner. I think that's one of the questions that also came up. Maybe then
Hmm.
sitting with her, a lot of people do that. They sit with their parents and watch something, or a lot of parents are on social media. They send links to each other. You have WhatsApp forwards. So giving them access to that content is going to be very important, because my mom doesn't consume WhatsApp forwards that much, but I know for a fact that she's a part of groups from her school batch, and they keep sending these forwards. And inadvertently, I do think that she ends up believing something or the other which comes from these forwards. And I one day sat with her and told her that, have you ever thought about fact checking things? And this is how you
Exactly.
fact check. So and I told her, I made her watch the social media. I'm forgetting the name of the documentary, but which explains that echo chambers is a concept. There's this really interesting
Mm-hmm.
interview of the News Laundry founder Abhinandan Sekri
Yeah.
with someone in Scoop Whoop, which talks about this concept. So I made her sit and I sat with her. It's not like मैंने बोला कि oh, why don't you go watch it? To be a part of that process, because for them it might just count as spending time together, but at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
they're also taking away or at least consuming some part of it. They're not going to change the next day, but in the hope that it's going to affect the way that they think, or the next time that they're consuming content, they might just think once, "Ki, acha, why don't I Google this and find out if it's really true or not?" So, yes,
Yeah, so like even fact checking. Moreover, I think with the now new, like you mentioned, Scoop Hoop, right? So the subscription based platforms,
yes,
or the maybe Quint, maybe Scoop Hoop, maybe The Wire, and all of these other
yes,
media forms that really do put out like stories instead of just being like putting out sermons and putting out their own articles for TRP. I think that is the kind of the right content that if everyone starts to consume, I think that is going to better this entire problem, so to say, right? So thank you, Anya, for this very elaborate response as well. It was really lovely iterated. Shruti, would you like to add to the same question?
Yeah, I think that was an excellent example because there are some concepts which are easily conveyed through a video documentary or something very small and short and through a more illustrative story format. And I think what she said is very important. When we look at solutions to tackle gender inequality, a lot of people want to hear very radical solutions. Ki overnight everything changes. That's not going to happen. It's a
Yeah.
very long process and it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of repeated conversations and you can't give up. There are days when you can stay out of it for your own mental health, fair enough. But this is going to be a slow process and it's important that whichever generation we come from, we accept it and we put in that effort. Just like she said, sit with your parents. Instead of being all like, "Ye log kyun nahi samajhte? Why don't they get it?" Put in that effort. Sit, if it's a 20-minute documentary, sit with them. Make sure that they sit through it. Have a conversation. I agree that in some families it's difficult to have conversations, but not many. There are a lot of families, especially with mothers, where you can mothers, fathers, where you can have a conversation. So we must keep that effort going. One. Two, I think there are very simple things that you can do. Just like we were discussing about, boys stepping up and having conversations with their peers. We can also go on to think like, in a lot of families, especially if the woman is not working, like Anya said earlier, they pretty much manage the entire house, including the budgeting and the financing and everything. Okay. So they are actually one of the best managers. Despite that, they are never considered in important decisions. Like decision making, let's say, the family is planning to invest in a car or a, flat or whatever. So if you're old enough to be a part of that conversation, you extend that question to the woman who's not involved in that conversation and ask her, "Oh no, but I want to hear what she thinks."
Mm-hmm.
And especially there will be men who will
Mm-hmm.
interrupt. And then you stop and say, "No, no, but I want to hear what she has to say." It's a simple thing, तो वहां पे you're not telling कि आपने जो किया वो गलत है. Interruption is wrong. You shouldn't be interrupting her or mansplaining. You simply said, "No, but I actually want to hear what she's saying." So indirectly, you are again making them realize that, "Oh, oops." Then those small things sometimes are so much more go a longer way than doing something very radical and wearing a t-shirt that says something very radical. Just take those effort. Small things really matter on a day-to-day basis than doing one big thing on one day and then feeling like, "Oh god, I'm too tired, मैंने बहुत ज़्यादा argue कर लिया आज, I can't do it uh, for the rest of the 364 days of the year."
Right. So I think inclusive interaction followed by some sort of a common sense can go a long way because like we said that it's just about taking a very small step which does not even have to be like a big deal. It's not supposed to be like given a separate recognition would really play the a good hand because I think someone in the chat box also mentioned that what is the small change that you can take. I think Shruti has very well iterated that this is the small change that you can start off with, because it does not have to be something too radical or something too impossible for you to really pioneer, but a small change that maybe you're doing, and maybe you could ask someone to make that small change if he or she is not already making that small change, because it's all about effort and how well it is accounted for, right? So I think it was great. It was a good set of questions that we had from the people who had asked us. Although we have a question lined up for you here. It's from Sheena. She says, "Do men feel insecure about their better halves slash wives earning more than they do?" So, I mean, anyone who would like to answer?
Question again: do men feel insecure about?
I'll I'll repeat it. Do men feel insecure about their better halves slash wives earning more than they do?
I think Himanshu, you should answer that question. We will respond because neither of us are men here. So, if
Okay.
you can give your thought, and then we'll probably respond.
All right, got it. So for me, I have a very straight cut answer, and I feel that it's depending on the professional capacity that you're in. Okay, so if I am, let's say, someone who's working as a corporate, and if I am supposed to probably be have a high paying job, then it's absolutely fine. And if I choose to be, let's say, maybe an artist who is not paid as well, it is then again absolutely fine. So the parity, so to say, does not come with the fact that it's my wife who is earning more than me, but from the professional capacity that they come from. So I feel that if my wife is really is doing what she really likes and would really love to do that, and maybe if that gets her a better paycheck, then why not? I mean, that should be, that I should be more encouraging on the fact that at least she's doing what she loves, right? And the number that is attached to the profession is something that is a reward to the efforts that she is making all throughout the month or all throughout the year, or at her time when she's working at a particular place or maybe doing her own thing. So I think that this is a very straight cutout answer that I have had, like, for it's been a while that I've carried this opinion because there have been times where this question has been thrown to me as well. So yeah, so this is pretty much it. So do both of you all agree, disagree, don't have an opinion, would not like to answer?
Anya, do you want to go first?
I was just going to say that I think not everyone thinks like you, for starters. I
Okay.
definitely do think a lot of people get very threatened, and I don't think they have a problem, but they get threatened by the income of their wives. And and this is something that we've been discussing in this entire conversation, that this entire feeling of being authoritative, I think that goes away from them. And because they've been accustomed to feel the way that they have more power, and more power equal to more money being
No
earned
money.
by
Yeah.
whoever is in the house. Whoever earns more money gets more say. That's just something that we've all heard slash seen, and I think that's what they get threatened about. And I as a woman don't see it as a problem. Of course, I think the person who's working hard and is getting enough money, doesn't matter if it's the man or the wife. But I definitely do see, and this is what I see in most households, that they get very threatened. And I think that they might not say it openly, but you keep seeing that in different ways that plays in their relationship, and they try to figure out ways to put them down. And more than the fact that the woman is earning more, I think it's more to do with power and authority that they think is being threatened. And it's a problem. I think it's a stereotype that they've been living with, that the cis man is supposed to be the powerhouse of the home. He's supposed to be the one who runs the household, and for society, ideally, he should be the one who should earn more and provide for his wife, provide for the family. I've never really heard a statement which says the woman provides for the home. It's always the man should provide for the home. And I think that's where, I don't know if it's an inherent thing or if it's something that, we've been accustomed by the way that we've been living in the society, that the man should earn more. And once they think that's not happening, they start getting threatened in isolation also, that, am I not doing enough? Am I supposed to be earning more because she's earning more? And I think that's definitely something that happens. But I do hope And I'm sure that there are enough men also who don't have a problem with who earns more. I think money coming to the house and having a comfortable life matters to them. But unfortunately, I think that number is smaller than the number that I told you about before.
I think yeah, that does make sense. Absolutely. Shruti, any take on that?
No, I think I mean, what she said is spot on, that it is about power and control ultimately. So it does matter to some men, most men, let's be honest, in today's day and age, even today rather. And like she said, that some men might say they're okay with it, but there is a lot of passive aggression that comes into certain conversations and it gets very awkward and things like that. Even a lot of forward thinking men have this is again socialization, right? Since you are young, you are expected to one be the breadwinner of, I mean, men are expected to be the breadwinner of the family. And now that things are changing and there is a shift, and despite what Himanshu you said, that if your wife is working hard enough in her profession, she should. Women work hard in most professions; they still don't get as much as men. There is a pay gap. Despite that, if that
Hmm.
somehow your wife has
Yeah.
managed to earn more than you, ideally nobody should be feeling
Hmm.
bad about it, especially if it's somebody you love. Ultimately, it's your partner, not like bachpan ka
Exactly.
dushman or somebody who's earning, right? So but I think there's a long way to go. There's this unpacking, unlearning. Hopefully we'll get there, but I do hope, because this is the most how do I say, your most primary or immediate environment, your partner, which is supposed to be a safe space. There, if there is this sort of competition or competitive attitude that comes, then that's really sad. So hopefully it changes.
I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Now I recall that there was this one episode of Patriot Act where Hassan Minaj did point out about the American soccer team, wherein they had really
Mm.
spotted out this entire factor that even, they're playing soccer, they have won so many titles, they are exceptional players, they perform much better than the men on the field, but it's just sad that, they don't get that kind of a recognition as well as the pay or the salary or as a
Yeah.
player, as an athlete. So I think that is a very a highlighted factor because even though you're working maybe twice as hard, but you're not
Yeah.
getting the remuneration that you deserve, then that I think really does put a dent in your in not just your confidence but also a lot of other factors. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, that was very well put. And there was one question that I found in the chat. It was a little striking, so I just ask that. So do leaders have gender equality, or do they talk about gender equality in their manifestos for elections ever? Like, have you all ever accounted anyone who is running for office who might have accounted for gender equality in their manifesto?
Do you want me to go?
Um,
So it's
I'm
not, no,
just
I think it's, sorry. Sorry, Anya, go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, 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 no. Go ahead.
So Shruti, you can take it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see it's maybe not yeah, there are parties that always mention, because especially in the last few years, gender has become the woke thing, it's in vogue. Everybody needs to speak about it. It probably is not because of genuine concern. It's usually, written in the form of safety of women and all of that. But I think what we need to push for is representation of women in, electoral politics, because
Mhm.
ultimately, uh, if women are not making decisions, there's no point in getting those higher education and PhDs and things like that. Women have to be on top of all institutions that make decisions. There are some parties where people have pushed for, 50, the party itself should have like a certain percentage of representation of women. I think BJD in Odisha has started doing that, like giving representation to women in the party, because these are, see, when there is a systemic problem, you need to have systemic solutions, because bias is not going, we all have inherent bias, even the three of us, right? So there are affirmative affirmative action steps taken in very many places, like panchayati raj institutions. If you see, I'm right now speaking from Kerala, so I can give you that example. You have women in, the local bodies doing all the heavy lifting and the legwork, okay, but you hardly see anybody at the top in, in decision making roles. So this is something that we need to push for and make sure that it's not some tokenistic line, one bullet point in the manifesto where you've written it so that nobody asks the
Mhm.
question later कि आपने gender के बारे में कुछ, you haven't written anything about gender, why so? So there are parties who take it up. What we
Hmm.
need to do is hold them accountable to it. That rarely happens.
Yeah. So the reservation promise is made, but you don't really see that many kind of
Yeah, that
elected maybe
33% reservation,
representatives.
the
Yeah.
women's bill,
Yeah.
reservation bill has been lying around rotting for so many years now. Everybody has been
Yeah.
saying we'll do it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Just yesterday, I was talking to friends on Instagram about women farmers not getting recognized. Okay, farmers doing the same work again,
Hmm.
all the heavy lifting, but they're not acknowledged as farmers in official records, because of which they don't get access to government entitlements, schemes. Families of women farmers who've died due to suicide don't get compensation even because they don't own land. So if you don't own land, state governments don't recognize you as farmers. You're considered as agricultural laborers or something. Some such, bureaucratic issue.
Okay.
So it's that entrenched and that problematic. So it's on the one end you need representation, because why do we say you need representation? Because lived experience से जो decisions लिए जा सकते हैं, the decisions you take based on your lived experience, nobody can take on your behalf. This holds true whether if you're a
Yeah.
woman or a non-binary person, a trans person, a Dalit, an Adivasi. You can keep saying कि I fight for their rights, but until and unless you experience injustice uh, on your own, you can't really make the right decisions on behalf of somebody else. So yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it is entangled in legal complications, and for that, I feel like we need more women judges to be promoted to the bench as well, in different courts, because I come from a legal like family background, and I have seen in Calcutta High Court, where there are different institutions where there are benches, and then there are a lot of benches where women judges are there, and they are making certain great landmark judgments, and it's born out
Mm.
of different courts. So I think that is also that becomes a part of the decision making, right, on at large, because if there's a public interest litigation, and then we know that okay, this is a fact that is concerning like more than 80 to 90% of the people, then I think that should be backed by much more reason. And I think gender would then be a very implicit way of portraying that, maybe embarking upon what is right, or what should be at least justified. So I think yeah, and more or less we've covered like the different aspects of social, economic, as well as political, as well as our day-to-day lives, the conversations that we need to have, the kind of content that we're supposed to consume, the kind of self-learning that needs to go on. So all of it has been very well summed up in today's session, and I'm really glad that we had this session as well. We had a lot of people tuning in and listening to us. A lot of people had a ton of questions, and I'm sorry to say that we've exhausted quite a few questions. So, but we'll take a leave for the evening. However, Anya or Shruti, I would like the feedback from both of you all on this session, and if there is any other point that you would want to maybe state last closing remarks for the session, I'd be love to hearing you both out. Anya, what
I
about
think
you?
I'm so glad to have had this conversation. Seems like a good start to the weekend, and so much to learn, from both of you and from our entire conversation. And I think the best part about these conversations are also that it makes you think and it makes you want to dive deeper into topics, and that's something that I really like doing. And I think the best part is that, even though Instagram seems like a really informal session, I hope that people who tune in even for a few minutes and they hear something, it's the same thing that I said in the beginning. It makes them introspect. So yes, for me, it was a lot of fun and I learned so much. And I'm hoping that we were able to answer all the questions and the students really are able to tackle those issues.
Awesome. I think like successively we should have sessions on Twitter and Facebook also, where we would find more of
Yes.
our parents or maybe different generations, so we could interact with them better. I think it's about a
Yeah.
platform. That Yeah. Shruti, what about you?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this session as well. And I think it's very important that we have these conversations with younger people, because I was just talking to my cousins just yesterday about this time. And I always feel like I do this weird thing. I go through Instagram and I look at meme pages and I see some of the comments put by really young people, some of them my cousins, and they're so informed. I mean, it's not laced with jargon or anything like that. It's very it's generally about any kind of injustice or fighting against any kind of injustice. And I seek hope over there, because I feel like my generation and the older generations, I don't know. It's sometimes you feel like you're running and you're walking into a wall, and that's it. There's nothing beyond can be done. But every time I speak to younger people,
Hmm.
every time I interact with them, I see some of the excellently portrayed memes. I think memes have become such a phenomenal way of communicating fairly basic things.
Right.
So that gives me hope. So I was most excited about this session because I think this is probably the first time I'm speaking to a very young audience, and I just want to say that you people give us hope. So please fight. Please keep fighting the good fight. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. It was great words from you, Shruti, and we're really glad that you did bring out your opinion. And I think it was all of these points that were rightly said were very well backed by facts and illustrations. So I think that with due course, now that we've been getting the conversation going, the narrative is building. I hope people do take it up on the executional front as well, and it just not does become like a session on a Saturday evening because it's on a Sunday or on a Monday or on a Tuesday where you really get to test it out when you're in social circles. So I think I think all that was said, all that was discussed was really great. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I was a good host to you, and we had
Yeah.
a really nice, exhilarating discussion. So thank you so much for
Thank
joining.
you.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
See
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.